Jeff held up Vince at No Mercy. That's the famous story. And we've heard Jeff's side of this. It's available in the archives on My World. We've also heard Bruce's side and even Jim Ross's side. So you can go in the archives and hear what Bruce thought about it as a member of WWE management. You can go in the archives of JR's podcast, Grilling JR, and hear how he felt about it at the time as the guy who was supposedly running talent relations and the contract expired. But Jeff always had a very interesting take. We've never heard from one of the boys. So now we're going to do that here today. Coming into that day in Cleveland, way back when, 1999, were you at all aware that Jeff's contract had expired? Did the boys know? Did the locker room know? Or do you find out that day?
To my knowledge, the boys knew. We certainly knew that day. And I'm not sure when exactly we found out. We certainly knew that day. And we knew that Jeff was holding up Vince. And we couldn't believe it. I talked to Jeff about it. I'd be interested to hear your take on what Bruce and JR both said, because I have not heard what they've said, but I've heard Jeff explain it. Man, it's one of the best stories in wrestling. They owed him a certain amount of pay-per-views, behind, because we were always in behind, 2 or 3 months of pay-per-views. And what Jeff wanted was to get the money that was owed him and get the money that he was going to get that night. So it wasn't just a matter of holding him up for a certain amount of money that was extra. It was, he wanted to make sure he got all his money in the past. So it's a little bit different than what I'd heard at the time. What I heard at the time was Jeff was just holding him up, which I still thought was pretty wild. It just, guys, you understand, to each his own. We're not mad at that. The boys are not mad at that. We can't believe that somebody let his contract expire, and all of a sudden you've got a guy who hadn't dropped the title that's going to a different company. That's where the problem lies, not with the fact that Jeff held somebody up.
I hate to be so brass tacks about it, but I can't help but ask. I feel like the boys would have not only been in favor of this because, hey, the boys take care of each other, but this is really one of the first times, not the only time, but one of the few times, I should say that, one of the few times that a talent seemingly has leverage over the office, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And Jeff used it. We understand sometimes you burn a bridge, sometimes you blow a bridge up, but when you leave, so what? You don't normally leave on amicable terms. It's kind of like getting a divorce. Oh, the divorce is amicable. That doesn't happen but once in a million times. When guys leave, especially during a competition that was so big like we had with WCW, you're not leaving on great terms. You're leaving because you couldn't get a deal done and you're going to the competition. So it's not like you're going, oh, we're all kumbaya and shake hands. You want to get everything you can when you walk out the door. And the boys, believe me, we were not mad. In fact, we thought this is actually pretty cool that Jeff's holding up the balls here, and it looks like it's going to work. And it did. We were big fans of Jeff for doing this.
I do want to ask, as Jeff tells the story, he makes it clear that he comes into the show that day without his bag with the Intercontinental title or in his car. And then he wants to have a conversation, but you guys all knew that from maybe the house show loop the weekend prior. Had he told people, or how do you think that word had gotten out there?
I don't know how it got around. I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe we had heard this before this from somebody. I'm not sure how we heard it. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we heard it day of. I don't want to put my stake in the ground and say that definitively this is exactly what we heard. I just remember knowing about it because of being there, and I'm not sure when we exactly found out. But, Jeff, our point about this was Jeff is doing all the right things. Jeff is not taking the title with him. He's not telling it to Eric Bischoff going, hey, if you'll give me an extra $500,000, I'll bring the title down with me. He was going to drop the title to a woman too. He's going to drop the title to China. And so Jeff was doing everything right. He just wanted to get paid. We didn't have any issue with this. The fact that he was, wanting to get all of his money that from pay-per-views that had been, he was going to get in the next few months when he had no leverage. Jeff knew this. We didn't know that at the time. We thought Jeff was just holding him up for more money, but we didn't have a problem with that either because Jeff was doing the right thing by us. Because he was doing the right thing by us, he was going to drop the title before he left. He never said, I'm going to take the title with me. He said, I'll drop the title. You just got to pay me. We had no issue with that whatsoever. We actually thought it was pretty cool.
I do want to give some context because this is not the first time that Jeff has walked out. He walked out back in 95. That was after In Your House 2 in Nashville. You may recall, John, that was the one where they had him drop the belt, the Intercontinental title at the time, to Shawn Michaels. And later in that night would be when he was exposed as not being a real country music singer. It was, in fact, the road dog or the roadie at the time who was the singer. And where does that leave the Double J character once you expose him as not really being a singer and he's lost the title? He could never really get any straight answers. So he did the honors and he dropped the title to Shawn. And then he and a young Brian James just went and left and jumped in Jerry Jarrett's hot tub, totally abandoning the post match. And also too, to add a little context, I know that, this is 100 years ago, but Brian had a couple of drug test failures for marijuana at a time when that was a no-no in WWE. So I'm sure Jeff thinks to himself, there's no upside here. I don't know where they're going to go with my character and no one's really communicating it with me. So I'm going to do what's right for business and drop the title, but then I'm out of here. I don't want to waste my time on this storyline if they may not really go with Brian and they don't really have anything for my character. Now, fast forward, we know eventually he does go to WCW. That lasts 1 year. He's not really involved with the NWO. He's not priority. So now he's going to come back to WWE and he has Vince Russo in his ear and he goes out and he does like a worked shoot promo. And he's going to talk about Eric Bischoff and the NWO. And he makes the mistake of trying to take a shot at Steve Austin, which is what everybody wanted to do. He's the top guy. That's who you want to work with. But he references the Austin 316 shirt and calls it blasphemous. Clearly that rubbed Austin the wrong way. Austin still had some hurt feelings about his dad's payoffs in Memphis, talking about Jerry Jarrett. So it just leads to a combustible situation. And now, to add context, in the year 1999, his wife, Jill, comes down with cancer. So he's going to be missing some time. Linda McMahon calls him at home and says, take all the time you need. When he does come back, even though the houses are selling out immediately, just as soon as you put them on sale, all the tickets are gone clean. That's just where WWE is in 99. JR cuts his money. And there's no real explanation as to why. Jeff always believed it's because they're not going to let me work with Austin. Austin is JR's boy. And I'm getting residual heat from JR because of their relationship. And Jeff understands that. You're supposed to cater to your top guy and take care of him. But now all of a sudden, it's not so fun with the rabbit's got the gun. Jeff can be like, I've got the title and I'll gladly put over your woman, but I'm going to need to be made whole. And exactly what you laid out. There was a trailing pay-per-view check. Nobody knew exactly what they were going to get for a few months because the pay-per-view systems would pay on a big delay. So he wanted to make sure he got all of that squared away before he jumped and went to WCW. And I think just as a way to turn the knife a little bit, he thought, let me get a little bit of revenge on JR, who cut his money while his wife had cancer. He didn't think that was right. So he said, double it. And he didn't want a check from them. He wanted it from the box office, so they couldn't stop payment on it. It's an unbelievable story. And one of the first times we heard of anyone really standing up to Vince. Like we heard when Warrior tried to do this in 91, that didn't work out. But Jeff made it work. And then he went and shook everyone's hand in Gorilla, including Vince, when he left. And he shows up on Nitro the next day. And the real reason he does that, in my opinion, is because once again, Russo has just went to WCW a few weeks prior. So he probably thinks I've got no clear shot up the card because as long as Austin's here, I'm not really going to get a chance here, but I might have a chance down there, especially if the guy who's running the show is in my ear telling me, hey, we can use you. You got to get down here to Atlanta. We know that this is going to be the end of Jeff Jarrett in WWE for a long, long time. When the night is over, do you guys still feel like, man, how about Jeff? Is that the talk of the business? Is that the talk of the locker room? Look what Jeff pulled off here.
That was really well done, Conrad. The analogy, everything that you gave, the explanation. The best part about it was when the rabbit has the gun.
Yes.
That was actually the best. I've never heard that before. That's I love that. I've just stole that, which Jarrett has stolen the Last Outlaw, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. In fact, I told him that in front of Stan. Jeff had like, I think Last Outlaw's shirt on or something, and Stan Hansen's there, who had used it in his book or something. I always thought I was going to steal that from Stan. I just always thought kind of like I'm the heir apparent, so I should steal it from Stan. Then Jeff puts it in his book or so, whatever he does. Jeff steals it first. And so like he out thieves me. And so he was there talking to Stan, and I told Stan when I was at your deal down there in Fort Worth or Arlington, wherever it was. And we were sitting there with Stan. I said, Stan, he stole the Last Outlaw from you before I could. I just want you to know that I could have done that. I feel terrible about this. And Jeff got a good laugh out of it. Yes, 100%. We all thought that this was Jeff. He really is an outlaw, man. I mean, the smart thing about this was not being able to stop the check. He got this. I think we're in Cleveland, right? So he got it from the Gund Arena. He got the check from the box office. That is brilliant because you can stop it from WWE. You can't stop it. The box office isn't going to stop it. And Vince brought in the check personally. I think Vince had a lot of respect for this. Now, when Vince went down, they bought WCW, and he's talking about Double J. The first thing he did was fire him on air. We figured that was going to happen. We knew Jeff would land on his feet. But yes, we were very impressed with Mr. Jarrett on this. All the boys were.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name's Daryl. Came from Massachusetts, and I moved to Wisconsin. And there's a lot of people that might be asking, why go with Conrad? Why go with Supreme Lending? And let me tell you something, brother. I think about the credentials, the tag team partner that I'd be working with. First of all, we got the Podfather himself, Conrad. How can you go wrong with that? And then also go on to SaveWithEric.com, which, who else could have kicked Vince's ass for 83 consecutive weeks? You can't beat that duo right there. But they did bring a secret weapon, and I didn't realize this because this was not advertised. I worked closely with Larry the Axe Thompson. And let me tell you, with all the stress with moving across the country with a large family that I have, it was reassuring to know that I had the enforcer at my back, handling questions from the other side of sellers, the other side with trying to find the right prices. He took care of all that. All I had to do was keep my eye on the prize and make it there to Wisconsin. They were absolutely fantastic. They checked in on me, especially Francis, very patient with me. I don't go through this process all the time, so I trusted the experts. I was able to call them. They called me if they had questions, and it felt like it was a personal arrangement. There was even a point in which, from the seller side, they wanted something else that wasn't part of the norm. Francis straight up told me, hey, we're loyal to you. We'll do whatever you want to do, and we'll make sure that you guys are taken care of. They came through. I made it to the dream. I'm the champion of my own destiny here. They were able to help pave the way for me and my family. I couldn't be more happy with the results. I went from having less than an acre to now 20 acres worth of land. They made that dream a reality. I'm Daryl, and I'm living in Friendship, Wisconsin, in my dream home, thanks to SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.